Welcome, listeners, to Together with Feeding New York State. I'm Ryan Healy.
And I'm Melissa Hernandez.
And today we're excited to be joined by Dani Lopez and Whitley Hasty. Whitley is the Benefits Navigation Manager at Foodlink, our Rochester-based food bank. And Dani is the co-founder of Lulo and the project director of the WIC Data Project. Dani, Whitley, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So as some background context for our listeners, WIC is shorthand for the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. Over 400,000 New Yorkers currently participate in the program. So Dani, Whitley, can you tell us more about the WIC program and why it's so important?
Yeah, WIC is more than just a federal nutrition program. It is a lifeline for everyone that is a participant of the program. I myself, grew up on WIC. I participated in WIC with both of my children, and it is a lifesaver. Provides, nutritional guidance, breastfeeding support, improves birth outcomes, access to prenatal care, and just helps everyone improve their dietary intake of essential nutrients during every important stage of development. So, and way more than those things, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. And WIC is actually the OG Food as Medicine program. So back when it was founded in 1974, the idea was, how do we tackle not just poverty and food insecurity, but the effects of that, particularly as far as nutrition. And so one of the core pieces about WIC is the food package, which provides over $1,000 a year in food and formula for those eligible for the program, which includes low-income families with children under the age of 5 and pregnant and postpartum people up to 12 months. And so the effects of WIC are really extraordinary and have a long-term impact, which we'll talk about a little later.
Thanks, Whitley, Dani, for really setting the stage and talking about what WIC is, how it works, and of course, the impacts on maternal health, infant health, et cetera. Can you both share a little bit for our listeners, just discuss some of the common misconceptions about the WIC program?
Yeah, I think one of the first ones to start, especially this day and age, is talking about public charge rule and as it pertains to benefits. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but one of the core things you want to emphasize is that WIC is a food and nutrition benefit tied to the children. And so it does not have and this is something we highlight for all different communities, it does not have an impact on immigration and citizenship applications. One of the big conceptions, especially after the first Trump term, was that participation in WIC and other benefit programs, including SNAP and Medicaid, would negatively impact residency and citizenship applications. It does not and has never. President Biden issued an executive order in around 2021 to clarify that. So just kind of as this first line, WIC does cover this population of children under the age of 5, pregnant people, postpartum people, up to 185% of the poverty line.
Thanks, Dani. And also, in a lot of the community outreach and I know daily conversations with folks who are wondering if they're eligible or not even really thinking about WIC, that I, let know you could possibly be eligible for WIC, is that if I'm not the biological parent, I can't apply, right? If I'm not pregnant, or I don't have a child, I don't have the child yet, I'm not eligible, or that WIC only gives out food. So those are all other misconceptions, right? There are kinship care programs that I've spoken to, grandparents in care of their grandchildren, and anyone in care of a child up to the age of 5. So foster parents, fathers, we can also qualify for the WIC program, and it's extremely important that they know that, because it gets back to the real mission of WIC and making sure that everyone gets the essential nutritional benefits that they need at every crucial stage of development. So if you're not pregnant, that's okay. I think that there's a huge dropout in participation after the first year of of the child, because a lot of people think that it's only for pregnant women or it's only for food or specifically baby formula. And it's not true. My son was able to enjoy broccoli regardless of the price all the way up until his 5th birthday, and I was really grateful for that. So this is the same type of thing. So we also help people access, SNAP in the work that we do. And it's a common misconception that WIC is a capped program, that you'd be taking benefits away from others who might need it more than you. And it's just a very old misconception. It's absolutely not. If you're eligible, you're entitled to benefits without affecting other people. And it's a beautiful program. And if you qualify, everyone should learn more about it.
Exactly. And I think one of the things to highlight too is that you can qualify for both WIC and SNAP. Since the programs have different income cutoffs, SNAP traditionally cuts off at 130% of the poverty line and WIC at 185%. And so sometimes in our work, we found that people think they can only apply for one of the other. That's actually not true. And that's why it's so important for us to get the word out about WIC and bust these myths so that families are really able to get those resources that they need, especially given rise in food costs.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I really appreciate you sharing, again, a lot about misconceptions that we've heard too. So appreciate all the information that you've shared. And so I know you've both had personal experience with the WIC program. Whitley, you've mentioned this a little bit so far in the conversation. Can you guys tell us a little bit more about this experience and what it has meant for you?
Sure. So my daughter was born in 2015, and I very much at the last minute decided I wanted to breastfeed. I guess I didn't think about it. And I was just so positively overwhelmed by the support, right? You're in the hospital. I had a cesarean, and the nurses and the support staff and everybody had made the connection to the WIC program, and I got a breast pump, and I was struggling a little bit in the beginning, and a WIC someone in the hospital had been working with a local WIC clinic, came in and just said, explain the process, right? It was amazing. And it just gave me a sense of relief. I felt really supported. And then throughout the years of both of my children having WIC, I knew that, if I didn't have enough money to buy, sometimes, strawberries are more expensive than getting something that's, a little less nutritious. I didn't have to make that choice. And folks continue to share with me and our team here that having WIC allows them to not have to, sacrifice those nutritious options. It financially also helped me because I was continuously working. I had different jobs, but I was working full time, and I was still like, well, my grocery, options are not going to be able to include everything that I want, but I knew that I could get, milk, eggs, cheese, tuna, vegetables. And then, walking into my WIC clinic also, whether I was breastfeeding or pregnant with my second child, you are immediately welcomed, at least in my local clinic, by friendly staff who know your face. There's a bulletin of resourceful information that's current about any childcare that's needed. And when the waivers were in place to have over the phone appointments, it was convenient, and they made sure to ask if there's any changes needed to the package. It was from start to finish, it was just seamless effort of people who cared, and they kind of, explained the WIC program, and now advocating for it, it feels like it's my responsibility to do that because it really saved me in so many ways, not just financially, but it was a huge part of my family.
Well, my one-line intro these days is I'm Dani from the Bronx, am a recovering former bureaucrat, and I was a WIC baby. And I say that proudly. I think sometimes we deal with a lot of shame and stigma when it comes to using these programs, when the whole purpose of them is actually to support our families and our communities, and get some more economic security on the way to economic mobility. And WIC is such a key part of this. I know for my mom, it really did make such a huge difference, being low-income families in New York City, right? Like, we know the price of living is just insane here. And like, just to really, I think, hone in on one of the things that does make WIC so magical, just like what Lee was saying, is that it's more than just a food program, right? It's more than just food and nutrition education. It's actual human beings. Part of the program design is that you have quarterly appointments to meet with nutritionists. And for so many of the moms that we've worked with, WIC is a lifeline. It is the first place that they go to for help. So WIC staff go above and beyond, not just in delivering the program, but also I've seen WIC clinics where they'll have mini pantries in the actual office to help close additional gaps for families. They do referrals to things way beyond SNAP, including diaper banks. They'll do community baby showers. The work that the program and the staff does is incredible, considering just how little budget they actually have for it. And so the feedback about the WIC experience is just across the board. People really, really hugely positive. WIC is such an incredible program, and yet only 54% of those eligible nationally are participating, right? And New York has made quite a few strides, and about 66% of those eligible are enrolled in the state. So that's around 445,000 folks as of the last year, but that's still not enough.
Right. Well, thanks, Whitley and Dani, for sharing both your personal experiences and perspectives around WIC. I want to zero in on something. Whitley, in your intro, you had mentioned this, and Dani, you had just mentioned this as well, that WIC is, quote, a lifeline. How does WIC also relate to and connect issues like food insecurity and maternal health?
Yeah, as it relates to food insecurity and maternal health, its participation in the WIC program is linked to, I think, from 2024 State of the WIC report data, 28% reduction in the risk of preterm birth, and then a similar percent of reduction in the risk of low birth weights. It increases the likelihood of children in WIC households to eat more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, just based on what the package looks like for each family. And, I always say this to families that get, because we're so, in this advocacy space, I tend to forget that, food insecurity is not the lack of food. There are food insecure households who absolutely have food, but it's just not the enough food or the right combinations of food to sustain, the quality of life that we're all entitled to. So when WIC reduces household food insecurity, it just increases access to things that are more targeted towards those important categories of nutrition. So just the fact that, one of the beautiful things is we recently went to the conference, National WIC Association conference in April, and a lot of great conversations I heard around local WIC clinics partnering with local farms to help families understand not only where their food comes from, but how the importance of seasonality.
1,000%. And I think to highlight a few other stats, I know in that same report from the National WIC Association's State of WIC in 2024, they highlighted that every dollar spent on WIC saves $2.48 on healthcare costs. Like, that is huge. And a big part of that has to do with the nutritious food that's offered through WIC, as well as all of the preventative care that comes through regularly checking in and the kind of nudges of, hey, you should do this, and the referrals that WIC offers. And as I mentioned before, there is a significant overlap of families that qualify and use both SNAP and WIC. So because the WIC food package can be fairly restrictive in that based on the age of the child, WIC will not assign a dollar amount per se, but they'll give you item allowances. So for example, 36 ounces of cereal, 32 ounces of yogurt, a container of peanut butter or beans, things along those lines. We really see the importance of making sure that WIC is that first dollar spent, which frees up the purchasing power of SNAP because there aren't that many restrictions. So for a lot of these basic healthy staples, the whole grains, right, fruits and vegetables, WIC really does provide a significant amount. And so it's really important for us that families, again, are maximizing the WIC program and the food package itself. And the other thing I want to highlight, which is more long-term, which is also found in that literature, is that participation in WIC is correlated with better cognitive development for children. So this is just, that sounds like a nice thing. I mean, really positive thing, great, right? One of the things that we find in early childhood is that by the time children reach the age of 5, there is a big gap in cognitive development between more affluent and lower income children. Longer term participation in WIC, because again, those referrals and the nutritious food access is correlated with reducing, and sometimes, again, the longer the participation is, eliminating that gap. And that is really, really crucial because sometimes we expect, right, that the public schools, right, and colleges are going to close these gaps between students, and they don't. Like this investment really does start up front, and it's not just, again, like Whitley said beautifully, it's not just about food access, it's about nutritious food, right? It's about getting what we need to really flourish from childhood on up.
Absolutely. I appreciate both of you bringing up those points and how, I mean, it seems common sense, but nutritious, healthy food really helps with the health of both mothers and children and everyone, really. And so I appreciate you both mentioning that. And Whitley, I want to circle back on a point you were talking about partnerships with local farms. So can you both talk a little bit about what WIC means for farmers and local businesses?
So coming from the Bronx, we are, our county is functionally a food desert. Just going to put that out there. And part of the beauty of the WIC program and that food package is that cash value benefit that covers fruits and vegetables. And in the summer, the additional farmers market nutrition program, or FMMP, checks, which again, this is a reflection of a program that is still modernizing, right? Those checks, I think this year are $50. And those are given to families to spend directly at farmers markets. So for communities like mine, where we don't really get to access farm fresh food, it's a complete game changer. Not just for the food that you have access to, like kind of healthy, more locally raised, right? But also just the experience of like getting to take your kids. And we've heard this from so many moms. And I remember like my mom taking me to the farmers market in Washington Heights, just to be able to connect with your food in such a beautiful way is an experience that shouldn't be a privilege, right? And so that really opens up so many doors for low-income families like mine. And then on the farmer side, it opens up a whole new audience of people that might have been aware of farmers markets, but because of the conception, right, or the assumption that this is going to be so expensive, a lot of low-income families just don't go, right? Like, why would you put yourself in a place where like there's all these amazing things that you can't get? Like, it's just, it hurts. And so FMMP, like that portion of the WIC program really opens up so much. And there's farmers that we've worked with here. One of them, Judy from Uptown Boogie and Healthy Project, will talk about how in the summer she'll get a completely different audience, particularly young children, like moms with young children and seniors, because FMMP, there is also a part of the program that covers seniors, are able to come in with their checks and just kind of have this whole bounty of amazing, healthy, fresh food. And they'll also get this nutrition education through the cooking demos that they'll do. And it brings in a significant amount of funding for these smaller farmers markets. That being said, it's a seasonal program, right? So unfortunately, this is something that really between May and October really has the most effect. And so one of the things that we know would help farmers even more is if there was a way for the cash value benefit part of the WIC program, which is year round, right? And that's on the electronic benefit card or that EBT WIC card, right? If that's something that farmers are able to accept one day, it would be, again, a huge game changer, not just for families, but for local farmers in New York. I mean, we're a giant state, right? It's not just New York City. We are our own breadbasket, but that connection between farmers and those of us in the cities isn't as strong as either one of us would like it to be. And FMMP is a small bridge. It's like really a small bridge to make those connections stronger, but we want to see even more. We want to support our farmers here in New York State.
Right. So, Dani, on your last point, you mentioned opportunities. I'm wondering, how's WIC keeping up with the times?
Yeah, I think one of the big, and this is also kind of a misconception, is that WIC, ding, 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 no longer uses paper checks. Woo. Which kind of like, I think to maybe the average listener is like, wait, what do you mean paper checks? For the longest, WIC literally just sent these paper vouchers to families to redeem. And then in 2019, more recently than a lot of us would have liked, but again, it's a funding issue. We transitioned to the electronic benefit transfer or EBT process with WIC. So families can more, not just seamlessly, but also with less stigma, fully redeem their WIC food at the supermarket. So again, instead of like whipping out your coupon book, right, and immediately everyone knows, oh, you're the WIC lady, right? You just whip out a card, it looks like a Visa, like no one is really going to be able to tell. And so that's like one of the biggest changes overall. But going back to that cash value benefit, this was not an original part of the WIC program. This was added around 20 years ago, but has been one of the most effective pieces of the food package. And so pre-pandemic, the WIC program's cash value benefit amount was about $12 for pregnant and postpartum people and $8 per child, which nice. We appreciate that money, but $8 doesn't really get you very far. And so a couple of things happened with the pandemic. Not just we had pandemic EBT, but that cash value benefit amount was significantly increased. And then this was codified as now a permanent part of the WIC program with the food package update that happened in spring of last year. So the current cash value benefit amounts are now $26 per child, much more meaningful. Again, not enough to cover every single fruit and veg option that we'd like, but a significant improvement and just game changing for young kids. And then for pregnant and postpartum people, it ranges from $47 to $52 a month. So even if you are right, find out about WIC in your first trimester and you enroll, that's like $300 in food that you get before getting before birth, and like that access to fruits and vegetables, again, really crucial for that pregnancy and for the child. So super excited that that is now officially part of the food package. The last thing I'll add is that one of our big goals and missions at Lulo is to target the misconceptions about what is covered by WIC. The WIC program itself has done a lot to expand access and increase choice for families. And so with the pandemic and a lot of shortages in products, a significant amount of food options were added. And so there's actually over 20,000 different items that qualify for WIC that families can get. It's flavored yogurts, Greek yogurts, just all sorts of different cereals. It's not just whole grain bread, it's tortillas, right? It's brown rice. And part of the future of WIC and modernizing is not just a tech conversation, it's also how do we make the WIC food package more culturally relevant and sensitive? And one of the things that is really exciting for me personally, being my family's Ecuadorian, quinoa is like native to the Andes, is that quinoa will also be added to the food package. So like there's so much that WIC is offering and is working to offer even more to families. We just want to highlight some of those wins.
I will also add that just in the last few years, WIC's undergone a lot of other modernization steps, right? Online applications and virtual appointments have become available in some places. So I think one of the hesitancies for finding out your eligibility or participating is the burden of the application, as it is with some programs that exist like this. Not just transitioning into like a card for using WIC, right? But a remote document submission. So a lot of the appointments are over the phone and the waivers are still in place for like automated eligibility checks, over the phone or even like continuous eligibility for some infants. And that helps to reduce a lot of churn with participation. And then a lot of WIC agencies are making big investments in multilingual outreach and support with like culturally responsive services. So agencies, not just WIC agencies, but also, Foodlink provides benefit navigation services that works really closely with not only the county, but other community organizations that need to keep the community aware of current guidelines and things to apply. Agencies like, Hunger Free America that does direct application assistance, outreach and education, and policy advocacy. So there's a lot of modernization that WIC's undergone in order to make it easier for everyone to access one of the greatest programs ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And so, switching gears a little bit, we know that there's been a lot of federal changes to public safety net programs, including SNAP and Medicaid. Can you tell us more about what federal changes might mean for the WIC program?
One of the really fortunate things for the WIC program itself is that it hasn't experienced direct cuts through the OBBB. However, we do have some concerns over cuts to SNAP and Medicaid and how that affects something called adjunctive eligibility and enrollment in the WIC program. So just take a step back. Generally, right, to enroll in government programs, there are pieces of paperwork that you need to provide, income verification being a common one. Families that are enrolled in SNAP or Medicaid can just show their enrollment letter as proof of income for the WIC program, which reduces the amount of paperwork they have to provide and reduces the processing time for their enrollment application. And so by making access to SNAP and Medicaid harder, fewer people are going to be able to have those letters, and they're going to have more burden and proving income eligibility for WIC. And we are concerned that that will just be really overwhelming and disincentivize people from applying. But again, it is one of the things to keep in mind is that these cuts to SNAP aren't coming down the pike immediately. They are scheduled to be put in effect after the 2026 midterms. So it's something we're keeping our eye on, and why these virtual appointments and really raising awareness of WIC now is so important. We want to make sure families know that it's not just, there are more challenges, yes, but there's also a lot of people here waiting to support them and helping them enroll in the program.
Part of my everyday job is to kind of talk people through how amazing WIC is, and right now seeing if they're eligible and letting them know that until things change, that it's definitely going to benefit them to be a part of the program.
Right. Well, Whitley, Dani, I want to thank you both really for joining us today, sharing your perspectives, your experiences with WIC. So as we wrap up, what's a call to action you have for our listeners, or a takeaway that you want our listeners to come away with after this conversation?
Any individual can, contact their representatives and advocate for continued funding of the WIC program. If you're curious to know if you qualify for the WIC program or want to learn more, you can call the National Hunger Hotline. It's also in Spanish. The participation in WIC has been steadily increasing, and right now is not the time for us to not fund this program. So continuing to spread the word about WIC and the importance of childhood nutrition and equity in nutrition is the key.
Okay, WIC works, and that's why we're here, and we're hoping that listeners can kind of take this in, also become WIC champions like us. And whenever you see someone with a child under 5, right, someone that's pregnant postpartum, just like give them a nudge, let them know this program is here for you. We have to take care of each other as New Yorkers. We're in a phenomenal example as a state of doing this, and also as a city. Just gotta like rep my people. And so it can be, yes, like the things don't look particularly bright right now, but this is exactly the point where it's up to us to kind of come together and say, you know what, let's get as many families using this program as possible. Let's make sure we put as much food and as many federal dollars into our communities today. And the more we do that now, the more people we get bought in, the more we'll be able to defend and protect not just WIC, but all federal food and nutrition benefit programs, because these are crucial for not just New Yorkers, but for this whole country.
It was very poetic, Dani. Yeah, WIC does work. We know that it does. There's a ton of scientific evidence that it's just one of the most effective programs to sustain equitable nutrition for children and pregnant women. And so just spreading the word about its importance and making sure that it doesn't lose any support is what we wanted to say.
Don't lose hope. Things are dark, but it's always darkest before the dawn, right? Cliche 101.
Absolutely right. Well, you heard it here, listeners. Dani Lopez and Whitley Hasty, thank you both for so much for joining us today. And remember, listeners, together we can end hunger and poverty in New York State. Thank you.